Hi, Mikala.
Hi, Linda.
So I've only seen this show in virtual reality.
Yep.
And I've read the text by Ted, which I think is a pretty fabulous description of its, I guess, macabre comedy and the cuckoo nest kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I won't really repeat some of the ideas he said, but maybe thought I'd ask you a few simple questions that would maybe, I don't know, give some more information to viewers of the show.
Sure.
First one, why birds?
Why birds?
Well, it's interesting too. It's also an exhibition that I've only seen virtually too. I actually haven't been able to experience it myself. So there's a lot of unknowing in it, and it sort of came out of, and here I am back in lockdown for the 6th time. So all these lockdowns, I think, has produced a kind of an experience of birds that became deeply fascinating, because I guess during lockdown the quiet becomes more pronounced because there's less traffic, so that you actually become a lot more aware of bird traffic, because where I live there's a balcony, and the birds kind of come and visit. And then I started, they also became a sort of a companion during, we weren't seeing, when you're in lockdown you don't see people, and we were they said, and also our dog had died at the beginning of lockdown, and I think it was this kind of other life form that became intensely important to sort of be with. And so I started feeding them. They're basically mainly a population of pigeons. It started off with just a couple, and then ended up being, now I have a steady flock of 30 that visit every day, twice a day.
Why? Because you feed them?
Yeah, I feed them because I want their companionship, and they want the food. It's a good exchange. So, and also we've sort of, part of it too became this fascination with the way they build nests, because they started coming and selecting twigs from the balcony. I have a lot of plants with a lot of twigs, and we know, just watching them day in day out, that they were very particular about the twigs that they chose. There was usually this twig with a kind of a V shape at the end. I guess it's a way of
part of the
so
relate to the shapes in some of the paintings.
Yeah, so the paintings, not in the paintings, but there are bronze stick sculptures in there's a nest form. There's actually the building blocks are called, that configuration of those building blocks is called nest, and on those building blocks there are some bronze twigs that are a sort of translation of the twigs that we found when we were watching them build nests, which we started selecting for them as well, which I wonder whether it sort of accelerated their nest building, and so the population increased.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, because in the show the birds, they come in human form, in digital form.
Yep.
I don't know whether there's a real bird in there in that video at all, or whether it's totally digital.
No, it's totally digial.
Okay.
It's a deep fake, a very deep fake bird.
It's like you're melding with the bird in another one though, right?
I think
in a bird costume or something?
Yeah, yep. I'm performing bird. There's many aspects of the idea of bird and no real birds.
Yeah.
So what I think, and also I think comes out of a lot of work over many years looking at what makes a symbol, and and the difference between a signifier and a symbol, and so that, and that props and all the things that go into having an affect, I see as like little sort of around a symbol, a symbol is something, I suppose, different from a sign or a signifier in that it's an accumulation, perhaps, of something that
Do you
stands.
see the paintings as like a symbol?
I see them as not. Yeah, they're a beginning, a sort of a beginning of a symbol in a way. They're me trying to symbolise some idea of birdness, but they're complicated through.
Heraldic. They look heraldic.
Yeah, and I guess by trying to form symbols of birdness, that they. It is a way of kind of, a question. It's not. It's a question to myself, I guess, about whether I can make heraldic these very ordinary birds that don't, that are so common that people probably don't. They're not. There's pigeons and there's rosellas and there's magpies and then there's big bird. They're very common ideas of birds. So. By trying to build them up into something heraldic, it's sort of, I guess.
Coming out of that, I suppose what strikes me about the exhibition is, apart from that sort of, they're very large, unlike birds as well, I guess, contribute to their heraldic.
Well, they become somewhere between figuration and abstraction too, because they're sort of they're sort of human scale in a way.
But the remarkable thing to me is also their colour. And it's interesting because I don't think anyone would have written about you as a colourist, really. But colour has become an increasingly important part of your work.
Yeah. And
in this show, I think it's really the most prominent element, certainly when you're viewing something online, when you don't have an opportunity to kind of encounter the objects. What you do see is the colour.
Oh, that's, yeah.
It's really striking. And I wonder if you could talk about what it means to you. And you have a very distinctive, I guess, use of colour, which perhaps it's hard to talk about. These things are often intuitive, but I'd be curious to know what you'd say about the colour.
The colour, I think I often get accused of being colourful. There's always colour in the work, and it is a particular vocabulary in the work. And I guess I'm continually trying to make decisions about the colour that will sort of shock me or surprise me, or not be something that's too aesthetically easy as a combination. But like with for example, the one that I think of as a pigeon, that's just hours and hours of really trying to scrutinise the colours in a pigeon. But then going to the paint shop and there aren't those colours. And I learnt a while back that you don't, if I mix up my own colours and then I go back to fix something, I can't get that same colour again. So now I'm much more painting straight from a pot, just because then I can go back and add or change, or I can find the colour again. No, every painting is a different, I guess, trying to create a different trying to undo myself, I guess. Every painting's an exercise in trying to undo the last one and find something to learn.
It's interesting how you described it as first based in observation, though. I wouldn't have necessarily picked that, but that observation gets kind of translated into what's available on the tin and what...
Yeah, it gets mutated. Like it's never...
Interesting to hear about the process, I guess.
But also the process is about trying to do things quickly and not thinking about them too much, so that they... Like, I quite like them to be quite expressionistic. Like they're quite emotional, or quite... I don't even know if emotional is the right way of describing it, but it's important to me that they are... there's a sort of... even though the process of making hard edge paintings can be quite laborious and slow, but the initial expulsion, if you like, of whatever shape it might be has to be kind of fast and less, trying to make it as direct as possible. And
the blackness, it's all set off by the blackness, really.
Yeah.
exist without the blackness in that main central work you call nest, and those shapes are from children's building blocks, right?
Yeah, they're
which would normally be brightly coloured.
Yeah, they're Bauhaus building blocks that would be primary colours. But they're a building block set from Alma side of Buscher, from the Bauhaus that designed that set. And I made those with Justine Williams for a show at Buxton. So they've had a few iterations, and so in this version, I thought they kind of fitted with the paintings because they're sort of the same basic geometric shapes, but they're three-dimensional. And this idea of a nest is something that you kind of think it should be more
comfortable.
Yeah, more comfortable, but it's really not. And it's there's something a bit dystopian, I think, about the nest. But it's also made up of chalkboard paint on the building blocks, so that
is that chalk?
So it's chalk.
Chalk over it.
Yeah,
that's hard to tell online. Yeah.
So it's like a three-dimensional blackboard that you can move around. So it's like it's a learning tool, and it's been drawn on, and the dust of the chalk is kind of still there. It's a kind of, there's sort of processes, I guess, of mark making and.
Yeah, I could kind of see that. So there's an implied interactivity in a way. I mean, that's also true of another element of the work, which I find kind of interesting. Before I read the text, seeing the rack of clothes and the mugs, it's a kind of like a shop in a way. It's introducing a kind of
merchandise.
Brand Mikala, if you like.
Well, yeah, merchandise.
The merchandise. But on the other hand, they're intended or were intended perhaps for performance. And so does that relate in any way to the interactivity that's implied by the blackboards?
Yeah, I guess there's a potential, sometimes I think you don't need to actually literalise the performance, because there's a lot of things that will perform quite well without you, and partly, and in this instance, of course, we're not there to, and also the pyjamas were intended. The pyjamas are made by Kay Abood, who we sort of collaborated, but they're mainly her work that, was intended to be worn by the staff and by Roslyn and Tony for the opening, but of course that never happens, so that they sit there on a rack much more like merchandise. And they are merchandise. They're very beautiful costumes that could be worn, and they could be hung up on the wall as sort of works in themselves. And then there's the cups that are hung on the branches, are on them. They're sort of more birds, but kind of like one is a painting of a bird from the wall, but then there's another one that's just a cropped, cut up kind of lorikeet from the internet. But so it's a way of kind of mutating the bird into a cup that then sits on the bronze twig that, so it's gone. So it's another idea of birdness, but it's a cup, but it's merchandise. It's functional. I always think that there's that art should be functional. It shouldn't be sort of justifiable, but it should have a function in some way. It doesn't necessarily have to make sense, but
so what function do the paintings have for you?
I think they break up the room. They stop the room being a room. And the colour of the walls is black and yellow. There's a lot of colour, saturated colour.
Footballish, really.
It's also quarantine colours, yellow and black are quarantine colours.
Yeah.
And but they're also just really quite jarring colours, which I love that really acid sulfuric yellow and black together. They just sort of, they're not nice. They're sort of not there's something a bit aggressive about them, and like I think the room, and I think that the big paintings are, I don't know.
And the sculptures, it's quite interesting how readily they've morphed into birds, like the hanging figures, which I think started, I don't know, quite a few years ago now, with just a kind of costume standing in for a person.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
And then you added heads, which were, I guess, totally abstract really, but because of the costume they look like heads. But now they seem to be very naturally turned into birds.
Yeah.
They really belong there in
I think they're also quite expressionistic, and I was really trying to channel magpies when I was. That would make sense with the football connection also, or something. There's something about it there. Yeah, it was connected actually. It was in Adelaide. It was the I've forgotten the name. The mudlark. There's a type of magpie, the piping shrike, which they call the South Australian magpie, or it's like a peewee or something. But I was sort of looking at them and just magpies too, but trying to sort of sculpt that plastic material into things. And again, it's a kind of an expressionistic sort of thing where you're trying to channel your, after looking at, and it does come, there is a certain amount of observation where I do spend an awful lot of time looking at magpies and birds and things and really scrutinising them. And
I think that's very clear in the...
But then the gestures become big and clumsy, but you still, I think, can get a feeling of magpie-ness and not... without it looking like a magpie. You get a feeling of it.
Yeah. Now, I don't think the little video that's part of Nest is visible online, but it looks like you dressed in a...
Yeah, no, it is. You can see it on the video online.
Oh, can you?
Yeah. They cut to an actual shot of the thing. It's me at 4 a.m. performing a bird of no particular... origin, no particular species, just a bird, an idea of bird. Like it's 4 o'clock in the morning, or 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, in a park near us that's notorious for, a lot of dead bodies wind up in this park, and a lot of women end up sort of murdered in that park, and so it was a sort of gesture to try and, if you act crazy enough, people, it's a sort of
ward off the evil spirits.
Yeah, like you're less likely to get attacked if you just sort of you alter the
acting like a bird.
You're acting outside the paradigm of what is expected. So then it's a sort of I think it is a martial art strategy. Yeah. So anyway, I didn't want to freak people out in the park, but it does look quite monstrous, this bird sitting there trying to make a nest in the park, and it was dark, even though in the video it doesn't look as dark as it was. But I realised there were women coming up the path, and they obviously getting a bit frightened, so I had to stop. But I would like to do that work again with maybe 5 people and have a sort of a flock running through the park at night. The other artist was Gina Moore, who's a fantastic animator based here in Melbourne, who I've done a number of collaborations with. We did a piece together in the park with possums, and then we've also done a koala together, which are both projections out onto special screens out in the trees. And
there's a haunting quality about all of those.
Yeah, so they're deep fake creatures. And the one that's in the show at Roslyn's is it's sort of morphing in and out of its geometry, like it is actually built up from geometry. So that's kind of the relationship I see into the rest of the show too.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell that it reminded me of origami actually.
Yeah.
At times it looks like, and that's obviously based on geometry.
Yeah.
Kind of at one point it kind of seemed as if it was being folded.
Yeah. So and then there's Kayabud also, and also Elnaz
These are collaborators of yours, did you?
Yeah, and I just a little mention of Elnaz, who did the ceramic bricks, the gold ceramic bricks for me.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we'll finish the chat there.
Thank you, Linda. Good luck in lockdown.
Hope everyone enjoys perusing the exhibition,
Yeah.
which looks fabulous online, even though you can't be there.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks to Ros and Tony too. Bye.